All right. Oh my goodness. Let us see here. Hi. How's it going? How is everyone doing? You might be hearing my printer here in the background. It's been a while since I've been here by myself. Oh, entertaining people by yourself. Let's just wait a little bit and see if we have more people joining us. I think this week has been just so eventful that I feel like we need to talk. There's been just so much going on this week. There's been too much going on this week that I'm like, we need to chit chat. How is everyone doing? Let's see who's all here. All right, good. Let me see who's all watching us. It's hard to see sometimes on the live, like who's actually here. Please write in the comments and say, hey, let me know that you are here. Oh, Zainab Hassan. Hi, Zainab Abaya. How are you? How's it going? Satay, fiantai. Oh, Noel, I see the comments now. It was a little delay with the comments. I didn't see the comments right away. How are you? Hi, Noel. How's it going? Anybody else in the house? Got about like 8 people. Hi, Khadija. How are you doing? How's it going on? What is happening? I feel like there's some catching up to do, you know? I have been interviewing people back to back for like weeks and weeks and stuff like that. And I feel like we haven't done like any catching up, and there hasn't been like, anyways, how are you? How's it going? That is the question. Hi, Saudi. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Wa alaikum salam. Fiican tahay? All right, so Assalamu alaikum, Samsam. How are you? How's it going? All right. So this week has been quite eventful, right? Sad eventful, right? So we had I was just scrolling through the Facebook, and somebody had marked themselves safe from Mogadishu bombing. And I was like, what? There's a bombing? Once I was just so like, it just hit me, you know? And every time this happens, you know, it's hard to react. We've almost gotten used to this, and I hate that we've gotten used to it. I hate that this is the normal. It's expected, right? It's expected. One person one time, when I was in Hamar actually last year, told me, when you're in Hamar, you're in between the last qarah and the next qarah. And I just, you know, to live like that, I couldn't imagine, you know, what it was to live like that. I couldn't imagine what it was to live knowing that there was going to be another qarah, knowing that we never know when we're going to die, but then there's likelihood, right, a probability of more death depending on what is going on in where you're at. Yeah. In the fact that they target places that are frequented by people, young people, you know, that just want to live, want to enjoy their lives as they should. They have a right to. I wrote down their names. I didn't know them. And there's a couple of friends that shared, that did know them, that shared about them. But I just wanted to commemorate them because they're not just 7 people who died, right? It's 7 dreams, 7 futures, 7 aspirations. They were whole human beings that lived and loved and had plans for the next day, and people loved them, and they had families. Okay, so the first person, it was Ibrahim Abdi. And Abdi Ado, who I follow on Twitter, by the way, I knew him, and he said he recently graduated from Turkey, came back to Mogadishu, got married in the same month, started working, and was a very ambitious young man. We used to hang out in our free time and talk about business ideas. Allah naharis Ibrahim. All right. So the next person, he said, was Abdurrazzaq UK, a very hardworking young man, very helpful, and a good friend with everyone in the city. My favorite part about him was his creative way of storytelling. Allah nahris Abdurrazzaq UK. And I'm assuming then that he's from the UK. So that's why his name is what it is. Another young man, Sultan, is very polite young man, respectful, and a good friend, one of the most beloved ones in the city. Allah naharisto Sultan. And another one, I don't have any information on the rest of them, but I just have their names. So it was Bashar Abdul Qadir and Abdullahi Abdi Jama. Oh, Abdullahi Sultan, that was Sultan. And Abdurrashid Tata. So Abdurrashid Tata, Ali Yara, and I think that was it, right? I think I have, that's the count that I have. Those are like 7 people. I really like this comment that Abdi wrote. He said, please, let's not only tell only numbers, they have names, stories, families, friends, and value. Like, they were people. They're not just like casualties, although they're often written about as though they are casualties, and they're often written about as though they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's not all they were, right? They're human beings who had dreams and aspirations and things that they wanted to do with their life. And that's not how they imagined their life to end. And I know that we don't expect to die in that kind of way. We do expect to die eventually, but we hope that we have a long and rich life, filled with love and happiness and, things that are important. And I'm sure that that's what they valued as well, living their lives to their fullest. And I really, pray for them and for their families, because I can only imagine, like, as a mother and a sister and a friend, I can only imagine, the pain that their families are in. It's just terrible. I wrote another thing earlier about this bombing and these bombings in general, right? And I said it's heartbreaking to hear about another bombing in Mogadishu, the city of my birth. 7 human beings died, and I'm angry at their senseless and untimely deaths. I'm so sad for their lost futures and the pain their families are living with now. And no, people have been trying to use this as an example to say, oh, you never know when you're gonna die, like, we know, okay, you don't have to use their senseless death as a lesson, right? That's not the lesson, okay? This is not a lesson that we can die at any moment. We know that we can die at any moment. This is another example of the Somali government's inability to protect its citizens. This is a reminder of the imminent threat of extremism. I can't say that word, extremism. And we have lost so much. How much more can we lose? How many more bright minds and souls? How many more futures can be stolen? How many more? I'm so weary personally. I'm so tired, and we need more than rest in peace and moving on the next day. We need more than that. And it's so, I feel like a hypocrite sometimes from my home right here in Columbus, Ohio, because I don't have to necessarily worry about that, right? So sometimes I'm like, am I just speaking from the ivory tower? I don't know, but I think that we need more than REPs. I think we need more than Wade Dada. I think we need more than people who live in Hamar are between one qarah and the next. I think we need more than that. We need accountability, right? We really need accountability. Zobe, right, in October 2017, was supposed to be our never again. I remember that time. I was talking to my son about it actually earlier. I remember it. And I was living in another city. And when that happened that day, I don't know, I just sat on my couch and I cried and I cried and I cried. And I couldn't believe, like 587 people. And I felt that there were probably more, right? There were probably people who are not found. But that was supposed to be like our wake-up call, right? That was supposed to be our wake-up call, like no more. No more. But here we are yet again. And here we are again. And here we remain in pain and in stagnation. And my heart, and I know the heart of many people, just can't take anymore. And the soil, like the Somali soil, can't take any more blood. And we have to have accountability. And not the meaningless gestures of accountability of shooting people like some حكم كتوكتين, like there was an execution of 3 people and it's presumably they were, extremists. But is there real accountability? Or is the execution today used to cover up yesterday? Like, look at us, we're doing something. If you were doing something, then would have yesterday occurred, right? You're punishing people, like you're shooting people now that maybe committed something. One of the guys was in jail for like a year by now. Right? So if you had been doing something, then maybe yesterday wouldn't have happened. And I know somebody here mentioned something about musharahin, and that's all the focus has been lately, just musharahin. Somebody saw musharahin. And it's like this is the wrong focus. Like without stability, without safety, there's nothing else. Like I'm like, there's nothing else without safety. And I just keep thinking, I look at these pictures, I looked at their pictures, and I'll share it here because I want to commemorate them, because I'm tired of just like here in the United States, right, of just hashtags. I'm like, that was a person, a human being. They woke up, they had dreams that day. They were going to maybe hang out with their friends. They were going to hang out with their friends. They were with their friends at an ice cream place. Like, you don't expect an ice cream place to be bombed. I mean, you don't expect anywhere to be bombed. But somewhere where just people are just, they're not government officials. They're not that government officials should be killed, but they're not, like, they're just regular people. What do they do to you? Obviously, extremism and all of this stuff is just inexplicable. It can never be understood because it's just not, it's not right. It's not explainable. It's never okay, right? I saw another video today, and it was about some guy here. I wish I could share the video with you guys because he was just talking reckless. I think he was talking about people who were social in Hamar or something like that, and he was saying like Togashodo the way Bananta or something like that. And I'm like, this is exactly the problem. Like, why on all Yabanahai, the boys in the black? Like, why? Like there seems to be a culture of, if I don't agree with you, off with your head. And in that kind of complete anarchy, like, forget about prosperity, like forget about nothing, forget about anything, right? Forget about anything. I thought to myself, like, I see all these beautiful pictures and about Hamar is returning and Hamar is doing this, and then I'm like, for who? You know, for who? Who gets to be safe and sleep soundlessly at night? And it's always like just the regular people who end up suffering, right? So it's just like a day really for me of deep mourning, and we live with that constantly. Samsam has a wonderful comment here. It's heartbreaking. I can't get over it. I truly believe in the power of dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our du'as and bless our country with peace. Allahumma ameen. Ameen. We are tired. Subhanallah. We are tired. We are so tired. And it's like, you know, intolerance is running us, and truly. And that's why when I saw this video, I really wish I could share this video. I used to use a different streaming platform where I could share videos, but this one doesn't let me. Oh, I wish I could share this video with you guys. He's just like, you're like, why are you saying, why is anyone ever saying like, whenever we hear that, alarm bells should go off in our head. You know, we should not agree with that. Like, we should never agree with that, because tomorrow we're gonna be next. You know what I mean? Anytime because he did XYZ, or I'm like, no, you can't do that, because then nobody is safe. Tomorrow they'll come for you. Like, don't you understand that there has to be like a standard where human life has value for the love of everything good? And he was just like, I presumably a fellow citizen, you know what I mean? He's just a regular guy. I don't know, haddaan daara inaad maqlaysin videoga ma arkaysin mise waad maqlaysin
inuu gaal yahay oo diinta islaamka ka tagay, inuu gaal yahay oo diinta islaamka ka tagay, ninka aad weli ka dhigatay, aad hoosta ka dhigatay, maanta aad garab ka dhigatay, oo ku adiga aad leedahay taladaada asaga u hay, maxaa ninkaas weeye? aniga waxaan qabaa nimanka haddii la dilo lama galay. So sama raaga haddii la dilo dambi lama galay. ninka maanta 91 Soomaaliya inuu ku celiyo rabo masaajidihii la camray, islaamkii la camray, ninka maanta inuu ku celiyo rabo, ninkaas dilkiisa waa banay, xaqiiqad dilkiisa waa banay. sheekh kasta weydiiya, sheekha banaytas waa dilkoo baan soo banana, dilkoo soo banana, dilkoo soo banana, soo dhicmaa dilkooda waa banaan yahay. sheekhana uu ka hadlay, Umar Farishna uu ka hadlay, aayadda qur'aankana sheekh Umar Farish uu ka hadlay. waa nimanka Madiina gilgilay oo islaamka gilgilay oo dhibaato ku abuurayay inay amri qaadaan rabay. suurta xasaab culimadu way taqaanaa, uu ka sheekay isaga wuxuu yidhi hala soo qabto, nabiga lagu diray hala soo qabto, hala diyaaliyo. maanaha ay tasari ana ma dhihin. marka ilaahay subxaanahu wa tacaala inay ka baqaan baan rabeenaa. nimankaas muslimiinta ah meel kasta ay joogaan dilkooda uu banaan yahay. dowladnimay ka soo jeedaan, soomaalinimay ka soo jeedaan. ilaahay subxaanahu wa tacaala ugu gaaloobeen. ilaahay ha u noqdaan oo islaamka ha kusoo noqdaan. way ridooween. ilaahay subxaanahu wa tacaala quraankiisa way ka tageen, islaamka way ka tageen. waxaan leenahay nimankaas ilaahay ka baqa, ilaahay ka baqaan leenahay. dadka islaamka ninka 91 wuxuu yidhi, ninka la yidhaahdo khayro wuxuu yidhi, haddana waxa aan rabnaa la yeelin buu yidhi, wixii maqalo ka dhaca ka dhacaawiyo, wixii maqalo ka dhacay yaa ka dhacaawiyo. masaa ka ridi kara xamadkaas kama ridi karo, wuu iska hadlay. marka qolada soo dirto bay qarxinayaan, waxaa ma tiri karaan. intaasay kusoo koobayaa. asalaamu calaykum waraxmatullah. waxaan kusoo dhaweynayaa.
So that's the kind of people that are given like a platform, you know, a podium to like spew their hate, you know. Like anytime you hear that, I mean, alarm bells, extremism, I'm like, the boys in black, but because it's like they're in a culture, in a society where that's allowed, where intolerance and anybody who you disagree with is fair game. Why are all yabanai, right? They're not even like the real enemy. The real enemy is the extremism that is allowed to be there. That if I don't agree with you, off with your head. That is the real problem. And like this like targeted like security and I don't know, the AU or AMISOM or anybody like, or the Somali army like targeting Al-Shabaab, I'm like, why don't you target like the violent rhetoric? Why don't you target, you know, why don't you invest in the educational institutions? Why don't you like establish a new culture of more tolerance, you know, and plurality of like thought and idea? Because in that kind of environment, they wouldn't be able to flourish. They wouldn't be able to flourish. They wouldn't have any audience. They wouldn't have anybody, you know, they wouldn't. Right? So we continue losing people because we're looking in the wrong places. So like we're not looking at the root of the problem. We're looking like at the symptoms, right? We're not looking at the disease. The underlying disease is the intolerance. It's the violent rhetoric that is okay. Is any time when we have lost the plot, like we are done for. And that's where we are, like, and we'll continue, I feel like we'll continue crying and we'll continue mourning, you know, good people. But we're not the only place that has had so much instability. Like there are other countries that have gone through civil war. You know, there are other countries that have bounced back. Like, why are we not learning from other models, right? I want to know, and I need to do more research on this. I want to know what kind of reconciliation, you know, that let's say Rwanda did. Because I mean, if anybody was going to completely destroy themselves, I mean, they almost did. And then they bounced back. Right? Or are we just beyond fractured, like, you know, fractured beyond repair? I will, you know, I'll touch on it, Abai. I'll touch on it. This is just something that's just kind of like, it bothered me so much, you know, and I'm looking at these lads' names and I'm looking at, you know, their pictures, and I'm looking at, you're listening to this video of this man, and I'm like, we are in this shit like knee deep. We are like, this is it's a state of emergency. You know, we've been in a state of emergency for a while, but every time we think we'll take 2 steps forward, we take 1 back. No, we take 3 back, actually. Anytime that we lose people to violence, to extremism, it just shows that the foundation isn't stable, right? It just shows that whatever is being built, it doesn't have a solid foundation, right? It's not perfect here either, but any country really that has gone through a civil war and had to undergo reconstruction, there's some pillars in society that have to be solid. They have to be solid, you know, and the stability has to be non-negotiable. But before we get there, the people's hearts and minds like have to buy into that, right? Sometimes I think about the boys in black and I'm like, do they have an alternative, really? Do they have an alternative? Do they have a country where they have an alternative? There was like this research done about addiction, by the way, and it was about like they were giving the rats either water or water laced with drugs, right? And the rats were drinking the water with the drugs. But then somebody else came along and said, what if we like make this rat like park? We make this park and we add all of these amenities and we still give them either the water or the water laced with drugs. Let's see what they will do. And guess what? When they had other options, when they could like do other things, they didn't choose the drugs. And this was a study on addiction, but it can be applied to anything, right? When you have options, you may choose the better option rather than the options that may be right now in Somalia, you know, not justifying what they're doing at all. But I also imagine that the environment probably has a big part in creating people that do this kind of thing. Thanks, Abdul. Thanks very much. Until people are going to allow themselves to be held accountable, nothing will change. And that's the thing too, Falmo. It's like the intolerance is just so embedded now in our psyche that there are people that really believe that the boys in black are doing what's necessary. I mean, like Malcolm X, right? By any means necessary, like they support them. Just as you heard this man say, like, I mean, if it's just up to my own mind to figure out who lives or who dies, like I'm God, then you know what I mean? There's nothing really, like they say they believe in God, but I'm like, you don't even hold human life sacred. Like, I made me laugh that he was saying in the same sentence, like, Inshallah, hadu ilahi idman. I'm like, but you just said, Hebel hadu sansu bidilkisu bananya. Like, how do you say that in the same sentence? How? You know? There's a mass confusion. There's mass confusion. There's just catastrophe. And I don't know when we'll see our way out of this. I think I've spent a lot of time on this. I think we can move on. I think there's more things that we could talk about. And we could probably talk about this more and more and more. Fatima said, we've normalized the violence. We've allowed it to continue to happen over again. And it's just so painful, you know? All right, somebody had asked me, sister, will you speak about Halima Allen's case? Okay, I'll speak about it after you share your thoughts. What do you guys think? Tell me what you think. What do you think about the Halima Allen case? What do you think about, you know, what was said, what was done, etc.? Tell me, what do you think? So what do you think? So just a quick, I guess, recap. Those of you maybe who are not in the age of social media, right? In the age of social media, is there anybody who's not in the know? The world, you know, information, right? Information. I love studying information and social, like sociology. Really, I'm thinking of actually going into sociology, even though I'm a science person. But there's like scientific method in studying human history and human cultures as well. But the age of information, right? Where information is at the tip of our hands, like literally the tip of our hands, right? Which is problematic. We'll talk about that problem maybe another time. There probably isn't a lot of people who don't know, you know, what this week, what had happened and what the situation was with Halima. So earlier in the week, there were posts, an Instagram story where she shared her dismay, you know, with the fashion industry and the way that she didn't feel like her hijab was being represented accurately. And I thought to myself, oh yeah, cool. Like, I thought the worst that we were going to hear was, oh goodness, now everyone is going to say Halima is such a true example of modesty. And, you know, they were going to probably like dump on us who don't wear hijab or who wear it like the way I'm wearing it right now. And I was like, here comes the modesty wars. And then I was prepared for the modesty wars because, you know, I've been in that for a while, you know. Typically, like, I don't cover my hair. I've been actually liking just turbans lately. I don't know. They make me feel like very secure, you know. They're like, wrap my head and it's cold outside. So anyways, don't hold me to it. You know, I'm not probably going to wear it all the time, but I like turbans, right? But I thought it was going to be a modesty war. I thought it was going to be like, oh yeah, this and that. And then slowly it unraveled, right? It slowly unraveled. And it was the message that she had sent to, I guess, people that she was working with. I guess it was people that she was working with. She sent this message as a response, and they were messaging her saying, I know this is a hard time right now and we can talk another time. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was her response that really got me. It was this. She said, y'all had 4 years to learn about me. And why did you never remind me once to FaceTime my mom or even ask for yourself? Why did you guys make me feel like I had to abandon my mom? You put your whiteness into my brand. You whitewashed my hijab. I came to you at my most vulnerable and you used it to control me and basically ride my coattail all the way to the bank. But I found my real hijab, all caps, so thank you for allowing me to wake up finally. I didn't really know what to make of that. And I thought to myself, what does all of this have to do with your mom? All right, I thought I would talk about modesty wars, and I was prepared for that. I was prepared to talk about the modesty because I've been on this journey for a while. And then I was like, what does this have to do with your mom though? Like, why do the people that you work with or you work for have to remind you to call your mom? Why are you blaming them for you abandoning your mom? And it just hit me. Like, it wasn't about modesty. It was about the fashion industry's lack of diversity, which is like it's a valid concern. And Black models and other models of color have for years talked about the fashion industry's lack of diversity and inability to like even have adequate makeup for Black models, their inability to handle Black hair and all that good stuff, right? So it wasn't even so much about that. It wasn't even about Halima. And I realized that it was about her mom. It was about her mom. And another video that she showed, and I can't show videos, I wish I could show you guys, but it was a video where she was being interviewed. And her mom, in more words or not, said that she wasn't happy that she was modeling. And that kind of gave me an inkling about probably the conversations that were happening at home, like, I'm not happy with this. Haddaad farxadayda rabtid mise ducadayda rabtid waxaan iska jooji. I was like, because I'm in this kind of like, I'm not a model, right? But in this entertainment industry, right? I act, and a lot of the girls sometimes that I act with, they get like that feedback, they get that criticism from their family, like waxaan iska daa, waxaan ma fiicno, dhaqankeenu ma fiicno, diinteenu ma fiicno. So I know it from that side too. And then the bombshell was, under that video, she wrote that her mom had to do the no contact, and that she said, don't come home until you get right with God, whatever that means. And then it dawned on me that this girl was probably disowned by her mom. And she was kicked out of her home and probably disconnected from her siblings, right? Because I don't want you having nothing to do with my kids because you're going to influence my kids. So go on, be out there. And I don't know if it was coronavirus or whatever, but I broke her the other day and we witnessed it live. And I think her mom got what she wanted. Her daughter to come back, crawling back to her, saying, Hoya, I am so sorry for what I did. What did she do? I don't know. But she said the queen won, as she should. And I thought to myself, what did she win? And more importantly, what did you lose? What did your mom win? And what did you lose? Because where there are winners, there are losers. Where there is a winner, there is a loser. So if she won, what did you lose? Because obviously you lost then. As someone who had been disowned, deprived of contact with my siblings, I felt so terrible for her. Because basically, she was emotionally manipulated, and there was probably extortion there. Don't come home until you do XYZ. You can't talk to your siblings because you're a bad influence. And I thought about all the people cheering her on and cheering her mom on, and how that toxic emotional abuse happens in our culture. And it's just cheered on. Great job. You should do whatever your parents want you to do, even if it's not good for you. Otherwise, you'll be called assy, and that's a terrible thing, right? And we don't stop for a moment and question, should that even happen? We don't even say for a moment, actually, absolute power corrupts, and there probably should be some balance between parent and child. Like, parents have rights and responsibilities, and children have rights and responsibilities. And adult children, well, adult children probably have more rights towards their own life than the minor child living in your home, right? And there's that lack of letting go, actually, of adult children that I have seen, especially girls, because the idea that you're allowed your parents just, take a step back, is that you are seen as an autonomous human being. And let's be real, are Somali women seen as autonomous human beings? Are Somali women, forget even our parents, in our society seen as autonomous human beings, right? Because all of these things are interconnected. They are connected, right? Our parents feel and also receive peer pressure, right? They have their own peers, right? Way isla sheekaystaan. Sometimes ilmahada waxay suubinayaan waa lagu kacaya. And maybe, I imagine, there were some conversations of that nature where you have embarrassed me. You have shamed me and shamed our name. Right? And often women, as Father says right here, are shamed into compliance. So when we talk about choice, right? Even I myself right here, because I'm a member of this community, right? I realize how much little agency I have sometimes, and it makes me so upset. And then I think about what gives me a little bit more leeway. I'm like, what gives me more leeway is that I have some independence. I have set boundaries and actually really, really fought for those boundaries in my family. I have paid for it, right? I was also disconnected from my family for a very long time because I refused to bend. But when you are a woman and you refuse to bend, you are punished for it. You're punished and you're banished. And banishment, really, social exclusion, is a terrible thing for human beings. We can't take that. We really can't. And all societies have practiced that. It's nothing unique to Somalis. All societies practice this because human beings fundamentally are social creatures, and we live, and we live on that social. That's why COVID-19 is giving us a hard time. We need other people. We need other people for survival. Loneliness kills. And when your society is built on family, as Somali society is, it's built on family, and then your tribe, if you're not part of that, then who are you? Because she says in another video, in that same video actually, Hoya, if I don't have my family's approval, I have nothing. I have nothing if I don't have my family's approval. And I think to myself how much of a burden that is on a young woman. How much burden that is on a young woman. If I don't have my family's approval, I have nothing. And there's so much to be said, there's so much to be said about, parental abuse and spiritual abuse. And, so, there's so much to be said. But for me, it wouldn't matter either way if Halima was in modeling or not. I liked her. I liked, seeing her. I have young hijab wearing sisters who are into fashion and makeup. And I thought, oh, wow, they can see themselves now. I thought that was nice, I didn't, any of her pictures, I didn't find them bad. But if she found them bad, I'm like, whatever, I thought at first it was just about modesty, and maybe, the fashion industry probably is to be rightfully, criticized. And it will continue to be criticized. It will. We have to. The entire fashion industry only promotes a certain prototype of woman. Now we have a little bit more male models, but it's a female body. And female body in any society is like a political arena, And somebody wrote that, and I really like it. Political arena where the battles of men are fought, right? And you'll find this everywhere in every society where women's clothing determines whether a woman is pious or whether a woman is respectable. I mean, America is not immune to that. We have that here too. Is her dress too short or too long, or all types of things, right? So this concept of modesty really is not just a purely Somali or Islamic thing. But I do know that it's mostly on women. In every society, if you pay attention and you watch carefully, it's the women that are always the bearers of this burden of their family's reputation, their community's reputation, their everything's reputation is on her. And it's a chain. Our responsibility as parents is to teach our children what's right and wrong. However, if my children choose not to wear the hijab, then I have no choice but to accept it. It wasn't even like, don't wear the hijab. It was like, I don't want you out there, I guess, modeling and doing all of this stuff, right? So there's also, we have to look also at, sometimes we just have this like very narrow view. And I used to have this really narrow view too about the hijab. And then when you just take out the layers and you take into consideration patriarchy, and you take into consideration colonization, and you take into consideration just all of these things, right? You realize that when we talk about choice, that us women really have very limited choice, to be honest, right? That's something that, you know, all women deal with, and I deal with it often, right? And then when you have parental expectation, this is the kind of nonsense you're not logically thinking. Parents are always right. This is the problem, you guys. This is the problem. Parents are not always right. Parents are human beings. Human beings are not always right. Parents may even want what's good for you and still go about it the wrong way and inadvertently hurt you. Right? When my father was sending me to to Kenya, honest to goodness, I don't think he was trying to hurt me. I think he thought he was doing the right thing. I really believe him. And as a parent now of a teenager, I'm like, during COVID too, I'm like, Lord, help me. I think he was trying to do the right thing. But you know what? That situation harmed me like so much. Okay, so parents are not always right, because they are human beings, and human beings are prone to error, and we don't always know the right thing. And oh my God, and a lot of them do not know what healthy parenting means. I believe healthy parenting means that you see your child as a separate human being from you. And I am working on that even myself. You know what I mean? Like, even for me, as somebody who continuously studies this and reflects on it, I think to myself, there are moments where I'm like, I think of him as an extension of myself. Why did I say that? So I have to go back within myself and say, no, Ifrah, he's not you. You are not him. He is a human being separate from you. You know, he's a human being separate from you. He may choose tomorrow things that maybe you wouldn't approve of. What are you going to do? Are you going to tell him, I disown you? One of my African-American friends, I love him, Malcolm Cash. If you're watching this, shout out to Malcolm Cash. He's so wonderful. But this is like, we were driving to Cleveland one time, and he was telling me, I'm so ashamed of what I said. He was like, what would you do if like your child did this or your child did that? And I was like, oh my gosh, I would be so upset. I would like disown him, you know? And I realized at that moment, I was what I was around. I was what the society, you know, that I was a part of believed and thought. Like, we're not immune to this. We're part and parcel of it, of our societies, and the thoughts and norms of our societies become a part of us. Like, we have to actively challenge it if it's wrong. But anyways, what he said to me was, no, if my child does wrong or right, that's my child. And he was like, if she came up with the cure of cancer, wouldn't I say that's my baby? That's my child? And I was like, yeah. If she does something wrong, he's like, that's my child, no matter what. And I thought that was the most profound thing that I had ever heard. And I believe in that. No matter what your child does, one, that's your child forever. And two, when they're an adult, you need to not clip their wings and be okay with letting them go and allow them to make their own decisions, whether you agree with them or not. You've raised them. Hoggaan ka wuu dhamaadaa. I always say that, hoggaan ka wuu dhamaadaa. You have to let go at some point. Right? So what does healthy parent mean? Right? What does a healthy parenting means, right? And there's some comments here that are just like, I can't even like address some of these comments because they're just ridiculous, right? So let's learn also the art of like making an argument, right? So because there's a lot of like kind of red herrings here. There's kind of like ad hominem attacks here. Anyway, okay. So she made a choice based on the advice of her mother, which was very wise. Okay, let's address that. That's okay, right? If that was the advice of her mother, without the extortion, without the blackmail. Right? Without the blackmail and without the extortion, that would have been okay, right? So when she said my mother went no contact and basically did not allow me to come back home, I knew it wasn't about advice at that point. I knew it was about emotional blackmail and extortion. And we need to be okay with it, to say either that's okay or that's not okay. I'm in the camp of that's not okay. You can say, although I disagree with you, you can say that's okay, right? But then also the previous thing we were talking about, because your argument is God over everything, Dean over everything, right? So you're saying that then blackmail and extortion is okay as long as it, is blackmail and extortion actually acceptable? Or does that align with Dean? Because where you're saying the means is okay for the end. That's what you're saying, right? So let's take a step back and talk about what happened in Mogadishu then. Because the people who hold extremist beliefs also believe that the means is justified to the end, right? Is the means justifiable? Is the means justifiable? Is blackmail and extortion justifiable? Because we need to have a balance, right? Because if we say the means is okay, then anything goes. And we have no social contract anymore, right? We don't have social contract anymore. We don't have guidelines that regulates our interactions if the means is always okay for the end, right? So there needs to be balance, right? So that's okay. If somebody advises you and it makes sense to you, then by all means, whatever, right? So for me in the beginning, I was like, girl was just not happy with the modeling industry. And I was like, girl, do you? The worst I thought it was going to be was like, oh my gosh, we're going to have annoying, Somalis and other Muslims about how she's the epitome of like modesty. I thought that was the worst. I was ready for the modesty wars. I wasn't so ready for, I got kicked out and I got disowned and I came back crawling back to my mother because without my family, I have nothing. That's extortion. That's emotional abuse. That's parental abuse. And if you're saying parental abuse is okay because Dean, then you're just making the boys and the blacks argument for them, right? Then we can't see the difference, right? We need to have some standards, right? And then somebody says, but she did say her next endeavor is to represent Somalia on the Miss Universe stage. So she's not done with the industry and title. And that's another thing. It was an emotional breakdown, in my opinion. It was an emotional breakdown. It was so painful to watch. It was so painful to watch. I was like, this is a breakdown, this is a breakdown. There's nothing else that it is. And this is a breakdown that came with that banishment, right? Being banished from your home. And I know what Somali parents do. When they banish you from this when your siblings too. You can't come home. You can't talk to the kids because you're a bad influence. And that does something to a person. It really does. It does something terrible to a person. It hurts. It hurts a lot. And you will do anything to make that pain go away. Even compromise, what you wanted to do, right? And I think that's what happened. And I think that that's what that emotional breakdown was about. And I'm sorry, and I'm sorry that she's in that position, right? There's layers upon layers of this. It's not just spirituality. It's not just Deen. It's also parent-child relationships that sometimes clearly lack boundaries. And we need to look at things in our culture and even in our religion that allow that, right? We do. We need to look at things that allow that. And we need to understand that parents are just human beings. And human beings make mistakes. I make mistakes. I mean, I'm raising a teenager. I make mistakes. I apologize. You know, I just swallow my pride and I say, I'm sorry. I dropped the ball there. That wasn't a good call. Okay, so Qadra says, it seems like pressure was applied, so she did what most people her age do, and that's find comfort from the internet. And that's another thing. Oh my gosh. I think next time we'll have to talk about the internet. I was talking to some wonderful, wonderful Somali women on Clubhouse. You guys, I discovered Clubhouse. If I couldn't find anything else to waste my time on, I deleted it from my phone though, but I found these wonderful Somali girls and they were like all over the place in the UK and here. And we got to a conversation about the internet and our cell phones and social media. And yeah, there's also a generation that's growing up with just always having the social media, always having a connection when sometimes you need to disconnect, right? When sometimes you need to disconnect, right? I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I should not have said that. But the internet is forever. Like somebody said, like she deleted this or she deleted that. I tell my students, I tell my son, the internet is forever. And that's horrible. It's good in one end because you get information, right? And you can find all types of information because historically, humankind, information access used to be so scarce. We didn't used to have access to information. And that's why certain people or certain groups could stay in power, right? So now the internet and social media has changed the game. We have access to information. We have access to other people. And it has its downfall, right? It has its downfall. Right, so our deen is between us and Allah. Nobody can make your practice. Oh my God, we need to stop dictating how people practice their deen. It is between Allah and the individual. And then another thing, it was like, another sister asked me, she was like, another thing, why did she have to publicly do this? She said, if that she regrets this, why didn't she just ask Allah for forgiveness and then not do it again? What was all of this about? And part of me thought about fanaaniinta waayahan maxaa la yiraahdaa soo gala and say hey, waa iska daaya haasteeda waa ka toobad keena ilaahay this public atonement. I believe atonement is only to God. I don't owe atonement. Haddaa adig qalad kaa gala, I apologize. Qalad haddaa adig kaa gala, but anything that I do that has nothing to do with you, I'm never atoning to other human beings, right? So where do we get this atonement? Why do we have this people publicly atoning for things that they've done? I don't know if that, I didn't even think that was an Islamic thing. I thought there was no intermediate between a Muslim and their creator, So this public atonement for me is just what is this? Why are people doing this, right? And then we can go back to social media and the internet and just having an audience all the time, right? So it could be that, I don't know, but I found it fascinating too. Why? What is the public atonement for? Who are you asking for forgiveness? We can't forgive you. We can't forgive you. Yeah. Right. My faith and the way I practice is nobody's business, right? I agree with you, Zainab, but apparently, the masses don't agree with you. The masses don't agree with you, right? It's just, it is what it is, right? People believe, and then here's this comment, Allah commanded us to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. It's not dictating anyone's behavior, but it is when you are telling people what they can or cannot do, right? There is just a lot of, there's just a lot to say about this, right? There's just a lot to say about this, right? From my vantage point, I thought, I was like, I'm sorry, and I don't know what you have lost, but I can imagine a sense of agency and autonomy. And setting boundaries with parents is really important. And I think especially for adult women, setting boundaries is important and excruciatingly painful, right? Because there is an undercurrent, right? In all of our societies, whether American, Somali, what have you, there's an undercurrent of ownership and a transfer of ownership from parent to husband, especially when you're a girl, right? So setting boundaries just seems so foreign to us, right? So parents might say, like, this is not what we do. This isn't our culture. Like, we don't do this. You know, we don't do this. But I think human beings are autonomous, and an adult woman, she does know what's good for her. She may not have all the answers. We don't. None of us do. A little bit age and we get more experience, but adult women do not need men or their parent constantly telling them what to do. Adult women need to be left alone to live their own lives. And if she asks you for advice, then give it to her. If she doesn't, mind your own business, maybe. It's just a thought. All right. So yes, we need parents that remind you of religion, but she didn't equip her daughter with the real life lessons she needed before she stepped into modeling, which is why she found herself getting so lost in the modeling world and left feeling unfulfilled. Somali mamas everywhere. Modesty begins in the heart first. All right. It's a double standard for me. Men are never reprimanded by the haram police. Only women are policed this way. Now, why are you dropping some truth bombs here? Why? Why are you dropping some truth bombs? Why are you telling us something that we don't want to know? We don't want to hear this. Men can do anything they want. Don't you know that? Just stop. Don't talk to us like we do. Oh, you mean Ayane? Ayane is kind of like, you know, it's like this is my platform, sweetheart. I mean, welcome to my home. So one accident joke. You can give your opinion, but you can't like be cussing out people here. Why are you speaking like this and supporting this? Oh, okay. All right. Anyways, any last remaining thoughts? For me, I'm not going to talk about from a theological perspective. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to talk about modesty. I'm not even entering all those things. I'm only talking about parent-child relationships and boundaries. And I believe that parent and child, adult children, have a right to their own boundaries, have a right to live their own life according to what they believe is right. And that we as parents have no right to extort or blackmail them or disown them until they come crawling back to us. That is emotional abuse. And I don't support that. No matter the cause, I don't support that. I will never support that. It happened to me. It's abuse. It's very painful. And it didn't make me want to do, actually, it didn't make me want to do what my parents wanted me to do. Actually, like, so if you think some people are different, some people may bend and break, and a part of them inside dies. And some people, but they will never have anything to do with all of this stuff that you're talking about, because you have tied pain and abuse and emotional blackmail and extortion with deen, and now okay? All right. No, nobody is an Islamic scholar here somewhere talking like they are. And we have abundance of this. That is the society that we live in. And it takes a lot of courage to say, you know what? In the age of information, thank God, in the age of information, you can find information for yourself. You need to critically analyze, and there's some critical thinking involved, and there's some exploration involved as well. Scaffolding of when was this said? Who was it said by? How has this been interpreted? What was the context? And in this day and age of information, so-and-so said, and it's just not acceptable anymore. We can find information. We're knowledgeable. We can read. I love the age of information. I'm really glad. I love the age of information, and I'm thankful. And, you know, I'm thankful for sisters like Zainab, because really, if I hadn't personally met Zainab and other Somali and other Muslim sisters, maybe I would have also continued to think that Islam was this male-dominated, misogynistic religion. right? And that is kind of like the idea that a lot of mainstream Muslims still perpetuate, that it's all about the men. And we're really not accepting that anymore. We're just reading for ourselves, seeking out our own scholars, female scholars, and making up our own minds, because we can think. God gave us brains too. As parents, we can only try and teach our son, not blackmail them into submission. And that's the thing, it's about blackmail. It's all about blackmail. While I understand and sympathize with those who are put in extreme circumstances by their parents, we cannot blame Islam, separate what Islam teaches and the mistakes people make. That is like easier said than done, right? And human beings in our brain, okay, we are constantly making meaning. We're associating, right? We're constantly making connections, okay? So a person, maybe in time, maybe with experience, maybe with knowledge, can do this separation. But when you are young and you're just learning about the world, your introduction to things matter, right? The way information is presented to you matters. Okay, so separate what Islam teaches and the mistakes people make. Sure, at 30, I'm about to be 34 in 2 days, 34 almost. I know that, but 15-year-old me, who was surrounded with patriarchy and misogyny, no. 15-year-old me did not know that. Okay. So yes, Marianne, this is live. Okay. Qadra, we need to raise children who can make mistakes and then can find the strength to correct themselves and find comfort in their parents to help them guide them in those mistakes rather than threaten them, or raising kids who would rather run to the internet, substance, or to others rather than their own parents. Somali youth are oftentimes getting so lost navigating the universe because community and family don't empower them. Islam empowers you, and so should your family. Can we like frame this, Qadra? We need to like frame this. You know what I mean? We need to frame this. Wow. A lot of the things in our society that we talk about, right? Everything starts at home, and we just kind of forget that, right? We talk about, oh, why are the Somali youth doing this? Or why is there a high case of, like, let's say, opiate abuse in Somali youth? A lot of times, and I've talked about this before, trauma is a gateway. And I believe that some of our cultural practices are very traumatic. And yeah, we need to do better, and we need to empower our youth. And I have done my hour because I only do an hour usually. All right, I thought I was late. Welcome, Marian. Welcome, Marian. All right, who's this? Ifka, how are you, my love? How are you? I'm just joining, but I love everything. Thank you, Olalo. Well said. Thank you. We got to read this again with Qadra. Qadra, you'll be the last word. You'll be the last word. Have the last word. We need to raise children who can make mistakes and then can find the strength to correct themselves and find comfort in their parents to help them guide them in those mistakes, rather than threaten them, or raising kids who would rather run to the internet, substances, or to others rather than their own parents. Somali youth are oftentimes getting so lost navigating the universe because community and family don't empower them. Islam empowers you, and so should your family. Thank you so much, Qadra. I really appreciate that. We need to frame that. Like, we need to frame that. Like, I have to take a picture of it. I will credit you. I would say Qadra said this because this is key. We need to empower our children. We need to not break them at home. We can't do that, because then they are vulnerable to all of they're vulnerable to everything in the world, right? We need to empower them. We need to have a balance, and we need to not have spiritual abuse, and we need to not say that the means justify the end. The means do not always justify the end. That's how we get extremism, okay? That's how we get the kind of things that is tearing, our nation apart right now, in my opinion, to be honest. It is. Extremism is not okay. There needs to be a balance. Don't necessarily, I did not, somebody said I was speaking for her. I was speaking for her. I was not speaking for her. I was making an inference, right? So if somebody says, hey, because I did X, my mom did Y, I can assume, right? Because I was in modeling, my mom told me not to come home and said she didn't want to see my face. I mean, that's That's disownment. That's banishment. That hurts. It's emotional abuse. And emotional abuse is not justifiable. It's not. So don't try to say for the dean, no parent wants to see their child go to hellfire. No, that's not even how you bring somebody back into the fold. Like, you've broken their spirit now. You know, you've broken their spirit. They're not whole now. Forget about what you were trying to accomplish. Threat and abuse doesn't make people close. No, I'm telling you, it doesn't. It was love, really, for me. And for most people, it's love. It's welcoming and love. That's what makes people back into the fold, if that is your objective. But threats and abuse, one day that person will be strong and we will be able to see through your BS. Khadra, thank you so much. You are amazing. I really want to leave it at that. I will leave it at that. Thank you very much. It's 1:05. I want to thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. This is Sunday afternoon, and I always say, I want to leave it at this. I always say time is the most valuable gift you can give anybody, and I really appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. Have yourself a wonderful Sunday afternoon and a start to the work week, right? I'm going back tomorrow. My little break is over. Ma salam.